The giant ships moved through the empty space between stars like sleeping giants waking up. They were so big that Earth's moon would look like a small rock next to them. Inside the largest ship, Admiral Vexthera stood looking at a screen that showed a blue and green planet far away. His three eyes stared at the beautiful world that hung in the darkness like a jewel. Finally, he said in a voice that sounded like wind through metal pipes, "After 3,000 years of waiting, we can go home." The planet on the screen was Earth, but the Admiral did not call it that. To him and his people, it was simply the seeded world, or our inheritance. Long ago, when their own planet was young and green, they had traveled to this distant world and planted the first seeds of life in its oceans. They had watched from far away as tiny creatures grew and changed over millions of years. But then their own star began to die. Their beautiful homeworld became cold and dark. Their people had to live in metal cities, floating in space, always moving, always searching for a new place to call home. And now, as their last ships carried the final survivors of their race, they remembered the world they had made so long ago. Science Officer Krellinax floated beside the Admiral, his many arms moving nervously. He was reading numbers and data from his instruments, and what he saw made him worried. Admiral Krellinax said, his voice shaking a little, "I think there might be a problem with our information about this world." "What kind of problem, Admiral?" Vexthera asked, not looking away from the screen. "The air has too much oxygen. It's much more than any safe world should have. And the gravity. It is so strong it would crush most of our people if they tried to walk on the surface." The Admiral's middle eye turned to look at his science officer. "That cannot be right. Check your instruments again." Krellinax checked his numbers 3 times before speaking again. "Admiral, the gravity on this world is almost twice what our people can handle. The air would burn our lungs. And there are storms there that move faster than our fastest ships. The lightning from these storms carries enough power to destroy a small city." "How is this possible?" the Admiral asked. "Our records show this. It was supposed to be a garden world? Perfect for life." "It gets worse," Admiral Krellinax continued. "The planet is covered with creatures that kill and eat each other. The plants make poison. Insects can kill things much bigger than themselves. Even the water has tiny creatures in it that can make you sick. This is not a garden world, Admiral. This is what the Galactic Council calls a death world." "Admiral." Vexthera was quiet for a long time. Around him, the bridge of the massive ship hummed with quiet activity. Thousands of his people worked at their stations, preparing for what they thought would be a simple return to their rightful home. None of them knew yet that the world they were approaching was one of the most dangerous planets anyone had ever found. "What about the intelligent life?" the Admiral finally asked. "Our scouts reported that there were thinking creatures living there." Krellinax made several marks on his datapad before answering. "They call themselves humans, Admiral. They appear to be the result of evolution on this death world. They are not like us. They are not like any intelligent species we have ever met." "What do you mean?" "They are predators, Admiral. Their eyes face forward like hunters. Their teeth are made for tearing meat. Their bodies are built for chasing down other creatures and killing them. And somehow, they have learned to live on this terrible world. More than that, ... they seem to enjoy it." The Admiral looked back at the planet on his screen. It was so beautiful from far away, with its blue oceans and white clouds. But now he was beginning to understand that beauty could hide great danger. "Hey, show me what our scouts learned about these humans," he ordered. Krellinax pressed several buttons and the screen changed. Now it showed pictures and videos that their scouts had taken from far away. The Admiral saw strange creatures walking on 2 legs, with no fur or scales to protect them from their world's dangers. They looked soft and weak. But then the Admiral saw something that made his heart beat faster. He watched as these humans threw themselves from great heights with only thin cloth to slow their fall. He saw them ride on top of large, dangerous animals for fun. He watched them swim in waters filled with creatures that could eat them. And through it all, they seemed to be enjoying themselves. "They do these things for pleasure?" the Admiral asked, not believing what he saw. "Yes, Admiral. They call it recreation. They seem to enjoy putting themselves in danger. And Admiral, ... that there are billions of them on this world." all living on a planet that should have killed them long ago. Admiral was quiet again. His military mind was beginning to see a problem he had not expected. His people were peaceful traders and builders. They had never fought a real war because they had never needed to. Other species always gave them what they wanted in trade, or simply moved away when the great ships appeared. But these humans, they lived on a world that tried to kill them every day. They had spent millions of years learning how to survive in conditions that would destroy most life in the galaxy. They were not just living on a death world. They had become death world creatures themselves. "How many ships do they have?" the Admiral asked. "Very few, Admiral. They have only just learned to leave their planet. Their technology is hundreds of years behind ours. They should not be able to fight us." Admiral Vexthera looked at the beautiful, terrible world on his screen. Something deep inside him whispered that this would not be as easy as they had planned, but his people were dying. Their ships were running out of supplies. They needed this world to survive. "Send the message," he ordered. "Tell them we have come to reclaim what is ours." The message went out from the alien ships at exactly noon, Earth time. Every radio, every television, every computer screen on the planet suddenly showed the same thing. A tall, thin creature with 3 eyes and gray skin appeared on every device. That could show pictures? "People of the third planet," the creature said in perfect English, then repeated the same words in Chinese, Spanish, Arabic, and hundreds of other languages. "We are the Zephyrian Collective. Long ago, we gave life to your world. We planted the first seeds that grew into all the creatures you see around you. We are your creators." Around the world, humans stopped what they were doing and stared at their screens. In New York City, people stood in Times Square looking up at the giant displays. In Tokyo, workers gathered around their phones. In small villages in Africa and South America, families crowded around their single radio. "Your world belongs to us," the alien continued. "We have returned to claim our inheritance. Do not be afraid. We will move you to a safe place where you can live in peace. You have 48 hours to prepare for relocation." Then the screens went black. For exactly 3 seconds, the world was completely quiet. Then everything exploded into noise. In the White House, President Martinez slammed her hand on the table. "Get me every world leader on the phone right now," she ordered, "and find out how big those ships are." In Moscow, General Petrov was already looking at satellite pictures of the alien ships. "Mother of God," he whispered. "Each one is the size of a city." In Beijing, Premier Qin was speaking rapidly to his advisors. "How many nuclear weapons do we have that can reach space?" he asked. But the most important conversation was happening in a small house in Ohio, where retired Marine Sergeant Tom Wilson was talking to his grandson. "Grandpa," 8-year-old Billy asked, "are the aliens really going to take us away?" Tom looked out the window at the sky, where he could see strange lights that had not been there that morning. He thought about all the wars he had fought. All the enemies he had faced, all the times people had told him to give up. "Billy," he said quietly, "let me tell you something about humans. We don't do what we're told, especially not by bullies." Within 6 hours, something happened that surprised even the humans themselves. Every country in the world, even the ones that had been fighting each other the day before, sent the same message back to the alien ships. The message was very short. It said simply, "No." Admiral Vexthera stared at the response on his screen. In 3,000 years of galactic travel, no species had ever said no to the collective. Most civilizations begged to be allowed to trade with them. Others simply ran away when the great ships appeared. But no one had ever just said no. "Perhaps they do not understand," suggested Communications Officer Drexfell. "Maybe we should explain more clearly what will happen if they refuse." "Yes," the Admiral agreed. "Show them our power, but gently. We do not want to hurt them unnecessarily." The Admiral chose a small island in the Pacific Ocean. It was uninhabited, just a tiny piece of rock and sand that no one lived on. One ship fired a single beam of energy at the island. In less than a second, the island was gone. Just empty water where land had been a moment before. The Admiral waited for the humans to surrender instead. Something else happened. Within 2 hours of the island's destruction, over 10 million humans had signed up to join their planet's military. Forces, Lines formed outside recruiting stations in every city. Old soldiers came out of retirement. Young people left their schools and jobs to learn how to fight in the Pentagon. General Sarah Hayes was looking at numbers that made no sense. "Sir," she reported to the Secretary of Defense, "we have more volunteers than we can possibly train. People are bringing their own weapons. Farmers are turning their tractors into armored vehicles. Scientists are calling us with ideas for new weapons." The Secretary of Defense, a calm man who had seen many crises, looked worried for the first time in years. "General, I've never seen anything like this. It's like the entire planet just declared war." He was right. But what the humans did not know was that they were being watched very carefully by collective scientists who were starting to understand something terrible. Science Officer Krellanax was sending report after report to Admiral Vexthera. Each report was more disturbing than the last. "Admiral," he said, during one emergency meeting, "we need to talk about these humans. They are not what we expected." "What do you mean?" the Admiral asked, though he was beginning to fear the answer. "Admiral, we have been studying their biology and their behavior. These creatures are unlike anything in our records. They are persistence hunters, Admiral. Do you understand what that means?" The Admiral's three eyes blinked slowly. "No. It means they chase their prey until it dies from exhaustion. They can run for hours without stopping. They can go days without sleep. They can survive injuries that would kill most galactic species. And Admiral... their planet made them this way." Grellanax brought up pictures on the main screen. "Look at this, Admiral. This human is climbing a mountain in a snowstorm. For fun, this one is swimming with creatures that could eat him. This one is jumping out of a flying machine with only a cloth parachute. They do these things because they enjoy the danger." The Admiral stared at the pictures. "This cannot be normal behavior." "Admiral, we analyzed their entertainment. Their stories and games are all about fighting and surviving. They practice war. For fun, they teach their children to fight by pretending it is a game. Their entire civilization is built around the idea that life is a battle that must be won." Another officer raised his hand. "Admiral, we intercepted some of their military communications. They are not planning to surrender. They are planning to fight us." "With what?" the Admiral asked. "Their technology is primitive." Admiral Krellanax said quietly, "I do not think technology is their primary weapon. I think they are their own weapon. And Admiral... there are 8 billion of them." The Admiral was quiet for a long time. Around him his officers waited nervously. Finally he spoke. "Begin the invasion," he ordered. "But be careful. I think we may have made a mistake." On Earth, humans were getting ready for war in their own special way. They were not just building weapons and training soldiers. They were doing something that no other species in the galaxy had ever done when faced with superior technology. They were getting excited. "Bring it on," said Marine Corporal Jennifer Santos as she cleaned her rifle. "Let's see what these gray boys are made of." The war was about to begin, and neither side was ready for what would happen next. The first alien ships landed on Earth 3 days after the message was sent. General Korthvin, the Collective's military commander, had chosen to land in what he thought would be easy targets, small cities with no major military bases, places where the primitive humans would give up quickly when they saw superior technology. The first landing site was a town in Kansas called Millfield.
Population
8,000 people. No army base, no important buildings, just farmers and shop owners. General Korthvan expected his soldiers to take control in less than an hour. What happened instead would be talked about in Alien. Military schools for the next 1,000 years. The alien ship landed in a cornfield outside Millfield just as the sun was coming up. Wearing their best armor and carrying energy weapons that could cut through steel. They expected to see scared humans running away. Instead, they found the entire town waiting for them. Farmer Joe Henderson stood in front of his neighbors, holding an old hunting rifle that his grandfather had given him. Behind him stood the whole population of Millfield. School teacher, the grocery store owner, the mechanic, the librarian, even old Mrs. Peterson, who was 85 years old and used a walking stick. "Morning," Joe said to the alien soldiers like he was greeting neighbors. "Nice ship you got there. Mind telling us what you're doing on my land?" The alien commander stepped forward. Through his translator, he said, "Human, you will surrender immediately. Resistance is useless. Our weapons are far beyond your technology." Scratched his chin and looked at the alien's shiny energy rifle. Then he looked back at his old hunting rifle. Then he smiled. "Well," Joe said, "I reckon we'll see about that." What the aliens did not know was that the people of Millfield had spent the last 3 days preparing. Every person in town had a job. The children had been sent to hide in the storm shelters, but not before they helped their parents set up surprises all around the landing zone. When the alien commander raised his weapon to show his power, Joe threw himself to the ground and shouted, "Now!" Suddenly, the cornfield exploded into chaos. The humans had turned their entire town into a trap. They had buried old farm equipment in the ground and connected it to car batteries. They had filled glass bottles with gasoline and farming chemicals. They had dug tunnels under the field and filled them with explosive fertilizer. The alien soldiers found themselves standing in the middle of a minefield. It's made from farm supplies. But that was not the worst part. The worst part was that the humans did not run away after setting off their traps. Instead, they charged forward, screaming and yelling and shooting their simple weapons at armored soldiers who should have been impossible to hurt. Alien soldier. Victor fired his energy weapon at a human running toward him. The beam hit the human in the shoulder and burned through his shirt. The human looked down at his wound, said that stings a bit, and kept running. He tackled Victor to the ground and began hitting him with a baseball bat. Another alien soldier watched in horror as an old human woman hit his teammate with her walking stick hard enough to crack his helmet. "Impossible," the alien commander whispered as he watched his advanced soldiers being beaten by farmers with simple tools. How are they still fighting? He did not understand that humans had spent millions of years learning to keep fighting even. When they were hurt, their bodies made chemicals that stopped pain when they were in danger. Their minds refused to give up even when logic said they should. But the real shock came when the aliens tried to retreat to their ship. The humans had been busy during the 3 days of preparation. A 12-year-old boy named Marcus had used his computer skills to hack into the alien ship's systems while it was landing. He had learned how to do this by playing video games where players had to break into enemy computers. When the alien soldiers tried to get back into their ship, the doors would not open. Marcus had locked them out. "Come on," he shouted from his hiding place. "I beat harder computer games than this." The Battle of Millfield lasted 6 hours. When it was over, 200 alien soldiers had been defeated by 8,000 humans armed with hunting rifles, farming tools, and pure stubbornness. Similar battles happened all over Earth, in Japan. Office workers used their cars to ram alien vehicles. In Australia, people released poisonous snakes and spiders into alien camps. In Canada, humans led alien soldiers into forests where bears and wolves lived. But the most frightening reports came from the cities in New York. Humans had turned the subway tunnels into a maze of traps and ambushes alien soldiers would chase humans into the underground, only to find themselves lost in a network of tunnels that the humans knew perfectly in London. People threw boiling tea at alien soldiers and apologized for the rudeness while doing it. In Moscow, humans used snow and ice to make alien equipment stop working, then attacked with tools they found in construction sites. Admiral Vexthera read the reports with growing horror. In 1 day of fighting, his forces had lost more soldiers than in the previous 100 years of peaceful exploration. "How is this possible?" he demanded. "They have no advanced weapons, no energy shields, no spaceships. Are they defeating us?" Science Officer Krellanax had been studying human behavior during the battles. His report was even more frightening than the military losses. "Admiral," he said, "these humans are not fighting like any species we know. When we wound them, they keep fighting. When we destroy their weapons, they pick up new ones. When we surround them, they attack from directions we did not expect." But Admiral Krellanax continued, "The most disturbing thing is that they seem to be enjoying the fight. We recorded communications from human soldiers. They are laughing, Admiral. They are having fun." The Admiral stared at his science officer. "Fun? Yes, Admiral. One human soldier, after destroying 3 of our vehicles with explosives made from kitchen supplies, said, quote, "This is better than any action movie I ever saw." Another human, who fought for 6 hours with a broken arm, said, "I haven't had this much excitement since my last vacation." Admiral Vexthera felt something he had never experienced before: fear. Admiral Communications Officer Drexel interrupted. "We're receiving a message from the human military leaders." "Put it on the screen," the Admiral ordered. A human woman in military uniform appeared on the screen. She had gray hair and kind eyes, but when she smiled, the Admiral felt his heart stop beating. "Hello," she said cheerfully. "This is General Patricia Williams of the United Earth Defense Force. We just wanted to thank you for the most fun we've had in years. But now, the real military is coming. People you fought today were just civilians having a good time. Tonight, you get to meet our actual soldiers." The transmission ended. Admiral Vexthera looked around his bridge at his frightened officers. Outside the ship, the blue and green planet spun peacefully in space. But now, he knew the truth about the beautiful world. It was not a garden. It was a fortress. And the creatures living on it were not farmers and builders. They were warriors who had been waiting their whole lives for a war worth fighting. 3 months after the first battles, Admiral Vexthera no longer looked like the confident leader who had arrived at Earth. His gray skin had turned pale, his 3 eyes were bloodshot from lack of sleep, and his hands shook when he read the daily reports. The reports were all bad news. Admiral Communications Officer Drexel said quietly, "We have lost contact with Battle Group 7. "How many ships?" the Admiral asked, though he already feared the answer. 12 ships, Admiral. All destroyed or captured." The Admiral closed his eyes. Battle Group 7 had been sent to attack a human city called San Diego. The humans had somehow used their ocean to hide submarines that the collective sensors could not detect. When the alien ships came down to land, submarines had fired weapons that turned the ships into floating scrap metal. But that was not the worst part. The worst part was what happened to the surviving alien soldiers instead of killing them. The humans had taken them prisoner. And somehow, within days, those prisoners had begun teaching humans how to use collective technology. Admiral Science Officer Krellanax entered the bridge, carrying a datapad that looked like it had been thrown against a wall several times. "I have more news from the Intelligence Division." "What now?" the Admiral asked. "The humans have built copies of our weapons, Admiral, but they have changed them, made them ... different." Krellanax activated a holographic display that showed human soldiers carrying weapons that looked like collective energy rifles, but wrong somehow. They were bigger, louder, and covered with strange additions. "What did they do to them?" the Admiral asked. "They made them more powerful, Admiral, but also more dangerous to use. A normal collective soldier would be afraid to fire these weapons because they might explode. But the humans do not seem to care about the danger." The hologram showed a human soldier firing one of the modified weapons. The energy beam was twice as bright as a normal collective rifle, and it melted through an alien tank like it was made of paper. But when the weapon finished firing, it was glowing red-hot and smoking. The human soldier looked at his smoking weapon, grinned, and said, "Cool. See what happens if we turn it up even more." "They are treating our technology like toys," Krellanax said sadly. "And somehow, their improvements work better than our original designs." Admiral Vexthera was about to respond when alarms began ringing throughout the ship. "Admiral," the navigation officer shouted, "we have multiple contacts approaching from the direction of the human homeworld." "It's possible," the Admiral said. "Humans do not have space travel technology advanced enough to reach us here." The main screen flickered to life, showing the space around their fleet. What the Admiral saw made his 3 hearts stop. Coming toward them were dozens of ships. But these were not collective ships. They were human ships, built from pieces of captured collective technology, but designed in a way that made no sense to alien minds. The human ships were covered with weapons. Not just a few weapons like normal warships, but weapons everywhere. On top, on the bottom, on the sides. Some of the weapons were obviously collective technology. Others looked like they had been built in human factories. Some looked like they had been made by welding together pieces of human cars and alien equipment. How did they build those so quickly? the Admiral whispered. His answer came from Captain Sarah Chen, whose face appeared on the main screen. She was standing on the bridge of the lead human ship, surrounded by a crew that included both humans and aliens who had switched sides to join the human military. "Hello, Admiral," Captain Chen said with a smile that did not reach her eyes.
Thank
"You for all the technology you gave us? We have been very busy learning how to use it." Behind Captain Chen, the Admiral could see human technicians working alongside alien prisoners who seemed happy to be there. They were all wearing the same uniform and working together like they had been teammates for years. "How," the Admiral asked, "how did you convince our people to work with you?" "We offered them something your civilization never gave them," Captain Chen replied. "We offered them the chance to be part of something exciting. Most of your soldiers were bored, Admiral. They had spent their whole lives taking orders and following rules. We showed them what it feels like to fight for something they believe." The Admiral looked more closely at the alien faces on the human ship. They were not prisoners, or volunteers, and they looked happier than most collective citizens had looked in centuries. "What do you want?" the Admiral asked. "We want you to leave our planet alone," Captain Chen said. "But since you will not do that willingly, we are going to make you leave. You cannot defeat the entire collective fleet with a few stolen ships," the Admiral said. Though his voice shook with uncertainty, Captain Chen's smile became wider and more frightening. "Admiral, what you are looking at is not our entire fleet. This is just the ships we built on Monday. We have been very busy." The space around the collective fleet suddenly filled with more human ships, hundreds of them. Asteroids, from the shadows of planets, from empty space, where the collective sensors had detected nothing. But the most shocking thing was not the number of ships. It was the variety. Every human ship looked different. Some were fast and small, built for hit-and-run attacks. Others were massive and covered with armor made from alien hull metal. Some looked like they had been built by engineers. Others looked like they had been designed by artists or madmen. Admiral Krellenax whispered, "How did they build so many ships without us detecting them?" The answer came from an alien voice on the human communication channel. It was Commander Zelton, who had been captured 3 weeks earlier during a raid on a human city. Admiral Zelton said, "You need to surrender now. These humans are not like us. We build one ship. We follow the same design every time. When humans build ships, every single one is different. They never stop experimenting, never stop trying new ideas." "Zelton," the Admiral said, "you are a prisoner. Why are you helping them?" Admiral Zelton replied, "I am not a prisoner. I am a volunteer. Do you know what these humans did when they captured me? They asked me if I wanted to help design better weapons. No one in the collective had ever asked me what I thought about anything. These humans listened to new ideas, even from their enemies." Captain Chen spoke again. "Admiral, we do not want to destroy your fleet. Your people can be valuable allies if they choose to be, but we will not allow you to threaten our world. So, I am going to give you the same choice you gave us." "What choice is that?" the Admiral asked. "Surrender or be relocated," Captain Chen said. "We have found several nice planets where your people can live in peace. Planets that are much safer than Earth. You have 24 hours to decide." The transmission ended, leaving Admiral Vexera staring at the screen. Around him, his officers waited for orders. But for the first time in his long military career, the Admiral did not know what to do. Outside the ship, the human fleet waited patiently. They were not threatening or posturing. They were just ... There are hundreds of ships built by a species that had learned spaceflight by stealing alien technology and improving it with ideas no sane engineer would try. Admiral Vexthera looked at his tactical display. His fleet was outnumbered 3-1 by ships that should not exist, operated by creatures who should have died on their death world, led by beings who had somehow convinced half of his own people to switch sides. For the first time since arriving at Earth, Admiral Vexthera began to consider the possibility that the collective had made a terrible mistake. The tide of war had turned, and the Deathworlders were no longer defending. They were hunting. Admiral Vexthera had 24 hours to make his decision, but he knew within 24 minutes what he had to do. He could surrender his fleet to these impossible humans, or he could fight a war he was no longer sure he could win. He chose to fight. The final battle began when the collective fleet tried to retreat to their home system. They thought they could escape, regroup, and return with a larger force. But Admiral Vexthera had forgotten one important thing about humans. They did not fight fair. The human fleet did not try to stop the collective ships from leaving. Instead, they followed them. Captain Sarah Chen had learned something important during the past 3 months of war. She had learned that running away only worked if your enemy could not catch you, and humans had become very good at catching things that tried to run away. The chase across the galaxy lasted 2 weeks. Every time the collective fleet stopped to refuel or repair their ships, human ships appeared as if from nowhere. Small, fast ships that attacked quickly and disappeared before the aliens could fight back. But the humans were not just attacking. They were learning. Every collective base they found, they studied. Every alien ship they captured, they took apart to see how it worked. Every alien prisoner they took, they asked questions. By the time the collective fleet reached their home system, the humans knew everything about their enemy. They knew how alien ships were built, how alien weapons worked, and most importantly, Zephyr Prime. It was a beautiful place with 3 planets that had been turned into garden worlds over thousands of years. Billions of collective citizens lived there in peaceful cities, protected by space stations and defense platforms that had never been tested in real war. Admiral Cistera thought his people would be safe behind their defenses. He was wrong. Human fleet that arrived at Zephyr Prime was not the same small force that had chased him across space. Somehow, during the 2-week journey, it had grown. There were now thousands of human ships, and many of them were bigger than anything the collective had ever built. But the most shocking thing was not the size of the human fleet. It was who was flying the ships. Admiral, Communications Officer, Drexel said, his voice shaking. We are receiving surrender demands from the human fleet. But Admiral ... they are not just humans anymore. The main screen showed Captain Chen standing on the bridge of her flagship. But she was not alone. Behind her stood representatives from dozens of alien species, creatures that the collective had conquered or enslaved over the centuries, were now wearing human uniforms and working as part of the human fleet. Greetings, Admiral Vexthera, Captain Chen said. I want you to meet some friends of ours. It seems that when we told other species about your plans to relocate entire populations, many of them remembered when you did the same thing to them. The Admiral stared at the screen in horror. There were Krill warriors who had been forced from their homeworld 200 years ago, or were Nexus traders who had been enslaved when they refused to give up their trading routes. How did you find them all? The Admiral asked. We did not find them, Captain Chen replied. They found us. It turns out that humans are not the only species that does not like being told what to do. When word spread that someone was finally fighting back against the collective, volunteers started showing up. Behind Captain Chen, a massive Krill warrior stepped forward. His species was known for being peaceful farmers. No, but this one was wearing human military armor and carrying weapons that looked like they could destroy a small moon. Admiral Vexthera, the Krill said in a voice like distant thunder, my people have been waiting 300 years for someone brave enough to stand up to your empire. The humans taught us something we had forgotten. They taught us how to say no. The Admiral looked at his tactical display. Collective home fleet was strong, but they were outnumbered 10-1 by an alliance of species that had somehow learned to work together under human leadership. What do you want? Admiral Vexthera asked, though he already knew the answer. We want the collective to stop taking things that do not belong to them, Captain Chen said. We want you to free all the species you have enslaved or relocated. We want you to promise that you will never again threaten a peaceful world. And if we refuse? The Admiral asked. Captain Chen smiled, but it was not a happy smile. Then, we will do to your worlds what you plan to do to ours. We will relocate you to a nice, safe place where you cannot hurt anyone. The final battle of Zephyr Prime lasted 3 days. It was unlike any space battle that had ever been fought before because it was not really one battle. It was thousands of small battles happening all at once. The humans had learned that the best way to fight an enemy was superior. Technology was to never fight them the way they expected. So instead of having one big battle between 2 fleets, they broke their forces. into small groups that attacked from every direction at once. Collective defenders found themselves fighting human ships that had been hidden inside asteroids. They faced alien allies who knew collective tactics better than the collective did. They fought against weapons that had been built by combining human creativity with alien technology in ways that no engineer had ever imagined. But the moment that ended the war happened when Admiral Vexara realized his own people were starting to surrender without being asked. Collective soldiers and ship crews were laying down their weapons and asking to join the Human Alliance. It had seen what life was like on human ships, where every person was valued and every idea was heard. They wanted to be part of something that felt alive and exciting, instead of the cold, ordered existence they had known under the collective. On the third day of battle, Admiral Vextera sat alone on his command bridge. Most of his officers had already surrendered. His fleet was destroyed. His homeworlds were surrounded by human ships that had somehow convinced half his population to switch sides. Captain Chen appeared on his screen one last time. "Admiral," she said, and her voice was not angry anymore. It was sad. "This war is over. Your people are asking for peace. Will you give it to them?" Admiral Vextera looked around his empty bridge. Through the windows he could see human ships moving carefully through the debris of the battle, rescuing survivors from both sides. He watched human medics working to save the lives of collective soldiers who had been trying to kill them just hours before. Captain Chen replied, "How do you forgive your enemies so quickly? Do you turn them into friends?" Captain Chen was quiet for a moment. When she spoke again, her voice was gentle. "Admiral, humans learned a long time ago that the best way to end a war is to make it so your enemy does not want to fight anymore. We do not want to destroy the collective. We want to make it better." Admiral Vexera closed his three eyes and made his decision. "The collective surrenders," he said. "We accept your terms." 5 years later, Admiral Vexera stood on the bridge of a human ship, wearing a uniform that bore the symbols of both his old fleet and his new alliance. He was no longer an admiral of the collective. He was now a coordinator in the Galactic Defense Coalition, an organization that had grown from Captain Chen's small fleet into the largest peaceful alliance in known space. The galaxy had changed. Species that had been enemies for thousands of years were now working together. Worlds that had been strip-mined by the collective were being restored. And everywhere, the human philosophy of everyone gets a voice was spreading. But the most important change was that no species would ever again have to face the choice between surrender and extinction. Because now, when bullies appeared in the galaxy, there was always someone ready to stand up and say the most powerful word in any language: no. The Deathworlders had not just won a war. They had changed the galaxy forever. And they had done it the same way they did everything else, by refusing to give up, and by making friends with anyone brave enough to stand beside them.